Roll call.
Heather,
Here.
Hahn,
Here.
Kepler,
Here.
Dodgeworth.
Here.
You.
Porter.
Porter.
Here.
Ryman.
Here.
Me.
And here
And
comes,
Ben and Lisa are here.
and here comes our scribe.
Sweet.
You can call her name too.
Moyer.
I'm here.
All right.
So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Terry?
Make a note of that, Terry.
Huh?
Make a note of that.
I know.
That's right.
I came, I saw, I went.
All right. So we have a quorum. We can do business. Proof of posting. This is posted on the 12. Home News, Star News, Times Tribune, Village Arena, Village Black Earth, Village of Mazo, and the Village of Cross Plains. Approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Kate and then Kyle. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. Public comment. Anybody from the public that would like to have a comment?
No comment.
Okay, we will move on then. The next one is approval of minutes from June 20th, 2024. Again, really well written. Thank you.
Yep, I'll make a motion.
Second.
Kate and then Norm. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. All right. The center ring, the big event. Discussion and possible action on facilities plan alternatives presented by Town and Country Engineering.
All right, so you guys all have the packet, I'm hoping.
Yep.
We have
I
studied
just
closely.
got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You could have come by Monday. You got that. I was waiting for you to
I
call.
I tried to call him Monday.
Oh, you talked to Mitchell, didn't you?
Yeah, on Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. It was sitting there.
Well, I didn't. He didn't know.
So the goal tonight is to follow up on conversations we had last month, and you can have as much as you want, but basically what we're gonna walk through is, I guess first, cost estimates and work with Jeff to kind of move everything around like we talked about last month into what's perceived as a high priority, medium priority, low priority. Then talk about what does that mean from a financial standpoint, you know, most specifically with the things that are on the high priority list, and then what are the next steps after this, and you know, if that needs more information from you guys or you want stuff shifted around, the focus of tonight is a discussion. So I was going to start with the cost estimates, and Lisa can go through kind of what funding might look like if things move forward. So the cost estimates right now, it's a handout that looks like this. Should be the second part of that packet. And basically what this does is breaks down those high, medium, and low priorities. What I'm viewing as high priority, you know, parallels what we talked about last month, where that would be something you want to be working towards right away. It's not like you have to order equipment tomorrow, because honestly you can't order equipment tomorrow, but essentially moving forward with as much haste as you guys can identify, and we'll talk about that with the schedule at the end. Medium priority are, you know, approximately 5 years from now, and then low priority things, you know, it's listed as 10 years, but realistically they're low priority. It's going to be kind of a gauge on how things last over the next 10 years. So I'm going to do a quick walkthrough. We can spend as much time on discrete details of this as you'd like, but basically the assumption starting on the first page of the cost estimate breakdown is all four lift stations, I should say, everything falls into the high priority category. One could argue some of the things don't need to be high priority. However, we looked at, because there's such critical elements to each of your communities, and they're quite small in the big picture, rip the Band-Aid off and do everything, as opposed to things like the generator, which you probably can get 5 years out of without any significant issues. The generator is so integrated with the control system nowadays that if you're going to do the control system and the electrical power equipment for the pumps, it's going to cost you more in the long run to try and then come back later and do the generator again at a later date. So the assumption within this is all 3 of the community lift stations plus Wisconsin Heights. That's all done in a high priority sense.
No, when you're saying high priority,
That's in that immediate.
right, but I mean, how far down the road are you talking high priority? 2 years?
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
All right.
I'm trying to compartmentalize this a little bit.
Sure.
So we'll talk about what the schedules could look like in a second. As far as, if you flip the page to the second page, I'm going to keep going. From a site work standpoint, the general assumptions are any site work necessary to support the headworks stuff, and we'll talk about in a second the headworks, but headworks is all deemed high priority. And then also any water improvements through the facility. Right now, we have updated the cost estimate. I'm not going to propose we decide anything today, but we've looked at both options for reliability of your water system here and a connection to Mazo. Ultimately, those costs from a capital and long-term cost standpoint come out very close to each other. Ultimately, I would recommend we consider Mazo-Mani, but I don't want to get lost in the weeds of this today. So the intention here is, in high priority, is addressing water issues and headworks piping in the yard as a part of this. Medium priority is basically pavement on the whole site, and then low priority, sludge loader, manure spreader, sidewalks if they ever get to that point. But then continuing down the list, headworks. That headwork, it's all encompassing of the headworks with the exception of the enclosures for the sampler, which is an outside thing. But basically, new equipment, new HVAC or additional HVAC to help with the space, and then addressing all of those structural concerns with the deterioration of the concrete, deterioration of block over the years, etc. Oxidation ditch, predominantly high priority again. Replacing aerators 3 and 4, whatever it was 4 years ago, we did 1 and 2. And then upgrading all of the piping and valves in there. A lot of those are non-functional at this point. Some of them have had the valve stems rot away, so we can't even try and turn them. So that's the intention of the oxidation ditch. And then, honestly, it's not even worth putting the numbers on the medium and low priority because you can do those whenever. Final clarifiers, we don't have anything in the high priority category. We do anticipate in that medium priority, we would end up needing to rebuild the clarifier drives. Those were not done, whatever it was, 10 years ago when we repainted the clarifier. And then, the recoating of the clarifiers we have on there, because realistically, about 10 years from now, you're probably going to have to do that again. And so if that happens to coincide with another project, we want it in the plan so you can fund that. UV and effluent, anticipating replacing the UV equipment is a high priority. The equipment you have is generally obsolete at this point. And truthfully, that's one of the things that likely would end up having some moderate payback, because your system is a pretty old and efficient system. The modern ones have the ability to pace based on flow and modulate how much UV they use, etc. Solids handling building. That one, I would say, of all of these, we're taking a conservative look at it for today. The big things are the belt press, lime silo and storage, addressing some deteriorating concrete coatings in the tank, or in the sludge tanks on the outside, HVAC for the building, and then along with that, one of the concerns I've got that really we won't know until we get into a design situation is, by addressing the HVAC, we're going to have, it kind of starts knocking down some dominoes that could trigger enough dominoes to fall that we need to do a code update. And the code update would require that we put those firewalls in around the staircases, because from an exiting and egress standpoint, that needs some additional isolation for the different stories in that building. Waste receiving was replacing one of the pumps, again minor. Sludge storage building, that's really also referring to the chemical feed building, because those are a joint building, and it's updating the chemical feed equipment. Administration building, I should also say we included all of the roofs on the whole plant as a part of that high priority. scope this building, it's really just the roof, the garage doors, and lab equipment. From an electrical system standpoint, the assumption we've got built in here is that the entire plant SCADA and control system needs to be updated. And because we're doing such significant renovations in the headworks and the oxidation ditch, those two areas would get addressed electrically as well. I'm kind of separating control and electrical. But we would not go in and start replacing all of the electrical equipment in the sludge building or the generator in the sludge building. Those kind of go hand in hand, and a lot of the equipment in the basement is not proposed to be replaced in that immediate priority. The pumps, that type of thing, it's whatever, 10 pumps or 12 pumps that are down there. So the intention would be in that medium priority, we would then replace the rest of that electrical equipment that's down there, which includes the generator and all of that. And at that point, those pieces of equipment will be nearing 30 years of use. And the balance of those, I think we looked at them last month, but if we didn't, the contractor cost, that's an estimate we use in there as a percentage for their overhead and markup. That number we've seen climb quite substantially over the last couple of years. Contingencies is a flat 10%. Engineering, admin, legal, and resident observation, those are 13% and 4% respectively. Just typical figures that would be applied to a project cost. So ultimately, based on discussing with staff a little more, the feeling is there's about $11.2 million worth of high priority needs, 7.2 of moderate priority, 1.2 of low. We can definitely talk about shifting things around. I'd say let's keep talking through this and then have maybe more discussion. So Lisa's going to go through kind of a breakdown from that high priority list of what the financial impacts of that might be.
So that's this other packet, the landscape orientation packet. So again, this is kind of looking at if we just take the high priority project costs, what is the rate impact going to be in the different communities? And this is not, I want to put this disclaimer, these numbers don't include Wisconsin Heights or Cross Plains because they won't be included in your rates, but they would be included in potentially money that you take a loan out for, unless they take out, it just kind of depends on how your funding ends up working out, but that's just a thing to keep in mind for like debt coverage.
So, and what she's getting at there is, and I haven't gone back and looked at it from 25 years ago, but I believe Cross Plains did not borrow for the treatment plant because they are not an actual owner of the Dane, Iowa treatment plant. Ray, you might remember this too. So essentially, all of the communities borrowed for Cross Plains, and Cross Plains paid them via the charges. What Lisa's getting at with this is, so this is just a raw look at each individual community. Eventually, from a borrowing standpoint, if you go ahead and do that, and it is structured the same way it was 25 years ago, you have to borrow for Cross Plains and have them be paying you back over time, which means the way the DNR looks at it, you have to have debt coverage to cover theirs. So it's just more complicated.
Yeah.
So then, kind of to get to the rates, this top portion is this high priority costs breakdown. So this 11 million number should look familiar. Based on your true-ups and equipment and how that's split between solids and liquids, that's how those liquids costs and solids costs are broken out. So it's just taking what percentages of the high priority costs would fall into each of those categories. And then there's estimated costs, very approximate for what Dane, Iowa solids would be and what Cross Plains solids would be. And so that estimated Cross Plains cost is not included in these rates. So then if you go to the next table, there's a lot of things going on. So that very top line is for 2023 RLUs, so just how many people are paying for their meter in each community. And then I took the current average annual cost, as I call it, from 2020 through 2023, which is that line 4. So it's an average from your true up of what each community has ultimately paid to Dane, Iowa. And that number includes, through the true up, it already accounts for differences in RLU versus loadings. So I just based everything off of percentage of that number. So using that number for each community, you get the cost per RLU based on the 2023 RLUs. So between $237 to $298 per year, which monthly is about $20 to $25, depending on the community. With these high priority liquids and solids costs, which are the additional liquids cost per RLU and the additional solids cost per RLU, that increases the total new cost per RLU, and just straight cost $297,000 minus the cross planes. The new monthly cost per RLU is going to be anywhere between $36 and $45 per month.
So a couple things for that, just to add to it, is remember this is Dane, Iowa's cost to the community. So it's not what a resident in each of the communities pays, because you guys have your own individual charges to maintain your collection system, etc.
So it's gonna be a lot higher than the rest.
Depends whatever.
It's gonna be a lot
It's going to be
higher.
higher.
Be real.
It's going to be higher.
Yeah. It's gonna be a
The
lot higher than this. So we're looking at
the
100%
Hold on, Ray.
increase for RLU.
the assumptions built in here for this table specifically are based around no grant money, a 20-year borrowing. So that's what's used to build this table. Lisa can talk about funding options for each of the communities.
That's this next page. So there's lots of different options for getting money. One thing to keep in mind that I have noted for the different options is whether or not BABA applies, which is the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Is everyone familiar with that?
Is that the build back?
The Build America, Buy America.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a newer, a year and a half old at this point. So that's the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's the law that Biden signed into effect about a year and a half ago. And what that triggers is a requirement that all things on the project have to be made in America, or 55% produced in America. There haven't been many. In fact, there's only been now 3 municipal projects bid in Wisconsin with those Build America, Buy America requirements. Please tell me when I say something wrong. But so there's been 3 projects, so nobody really knows the full cost implications of it, other than there will be cost implications for it. The challenge that we've found digging into it is basically electrical components cannot be BABA. So there's very few specific projects, and as you can see in here, you've got a lot of electrical. We know you've got a lot of electrical things that are of concern. That creates some complexity because it's not just that it's going to cost more. You can't buy a typically specified in Wisconsin PLC or VFD or Deoprobe that is made in America. And honestly, the industry hasn't figured it out yet. So the 3 projects that have been bid in Wisconsin, one of them didn't include much for electrical. The other one, which was one that we bid, was a water tower that we just separated the electrical out of the contract completely and paid for that with other money. And the third one didn't end up awarding any BABA-related funding.
This whole program is subject to change.
I hope it does. I'm a pessimist when it comes to that, but gosh, I hope it does because
And
it
what is
sucks.
the percent? 55% needs to be American.
55% of each asset. So it's not 55% of the overall project. So if you buy carpet, 55% of the materials in your carpet have to be made in America.
So that's something to keep in mind when considering funding. So the big ones that we typically use for a project like this would either be USDA Rural Development, which does have BABA applying to it, or the Wisconsin Clean Water Fund, the DNR Clean Water Fund, which can have BABA if you're over a certain population, which none of your communities are at the moment.
I want to throw one asterisk on that in the theme of things changing. That gets reevaluated every year. So it could change in the future. We don't know.
So then for each of your communities, I went through and looked at the different requirements for at least the 3 funding options on top: Rural Development, Clean Water Fund, and CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant. Just going through each one, Rural Development, that's the amount of grant and your interest are based on the population of your community as well as your median household income. So as of right now, Arena and Black Earth would get 3.25% interest and up to 45% grant. Very much an asterisk there because they, I think, almost never give you the maximum grant.
Yeah, no, I mean,
true?
it's very much MHI dependent, and the cost per user built into that MHI dependence. So it's possible. I'm going to say for your community specifically, it's unlikely that you would get close to that 45%. The other asterisk with USDA is that program has significantly less funding than it used to. It was, as much as you would think, because they have BABA applied, it was actually not the recipient of any BIL money. So they've been struggling to fund projects, truthfully. So that's another year-by-year thing. Every year it's a new story because it's at the whims of the federal government's budgeting. But yeah, right now that program, we use that program a lot because they do give out larger grants, and the other benefit it's a 40-year borrowing arrangement, which we don't recommend doing 40-year borrowing, but it gives you some flexibility in repayment, where you maybe do a 25-year borrowing or something like that, and have some flexibility on, what you do each year. So just random tidbits to be thinking about as we continue talking about this.
So the borrowing is based on median income and what was the other factor?
And population.
Population, okay.
Yes. Meso under RD would get 0% grant as of now. The other big option is Clean Water Fund. So this one has like 6 different tables and things to go through with different points depending on MHI, population, poverty levels, etc. You can get all that information on the DNR's website, and that tells you what, again, your interest rate is going to be and how much principal forgiveness you qualify for. So all of your communities right now get 55% of the market interest, so 2.5%, and eligible for anywhere between 20 to 30% of principal forgiveness. And then community development block grant is essentially a grant that you get. You do have to have a 2-to-1 match, and that one's dependent on your low median income that the state, I think, calculates every year. You, based on what the state has, Mesonia is the only one that would qualify for that. Up to $1 million in grant with a 2-to-1 match. And for this project, since you're all individual communities, you could do different funding options. But if one community does a funding option that requires BABA, then all of the communities would need to meet BABA.
Correct. The entire project would.
Project.
If any money is brought into a project that has BABA tied to it, it has to be applied to the entire project. Sure.
So then these other ones at the bottom, so focus on energy, that's not going to cover the whole project, but you can get money for more energy efficient equipment. Congressionally directed spending isn't guaranteed. That's essentially asking a congressperson or your senator to set aside federal funding.
It's earmarks.
Yeah, it's earmarks. And then the EDA does give out loans. Theirs are typically associated with like economic development, so more jobs and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But that could potentially be an option. So those are the general funding things. And then this last page, I'm not going to go through super specifically, but it's basically showing that first page had the worst case generally RLUs that the communities could switch to. So that increased to $36 to $45 per month, depending on how your funding shakes out and what payback period you end up doing, whether that be with 40 years with rural development or 20 years with clean water fund. This is just showing how that's going to impact your annual ROUs for each community.
So really that one's just meant to kind of give sensitivity analysis style of what the potential impacts of the different funding packages that are out there could do.
The last thing I'm going to mention is some of these do say they include CIP, so capital improvements.
Yeah, that's the FCI account that you guys have.
Yeah, and that's just, I'm assuming $250,000 for that, because that would be the cost of two things that had been called for or fit into that account. But again, that would be to your discretion.
So last thing, and you can answer or talk about this as much as you guys would like. When Peter had given me a call after the packet went out with just some questions and thought that kind of understanding the impacts of schedule is important with all of this, because even if you wanted to say go today, it's not going to happen overnight. So what this represents is basically the fastest you could ever do anything and tie it to some level of state or federal funding. So if you decided today, and this is an if, I'm not trying to push you to decide something today, but if you decided today, realistically, we've got a couple steps of the facilities plan left. This is the evaluation of your costs, but then a final report needs to be prepared. Realistically, that would be in September. So 2 months from the time you decide, we're talking about bringing a final report before you guys. It will also require a public hearing. So very shortly there, after you guys have reviewed the final report, public hearing can be held. That then gives you the opportunity to submit to DNR. So the facilities plan needs to be submitted to DNR. That can take the review of that facilities plan can take anywhere from 3 to 12 months. And so 3 to 12 months after that. Otherwise, the next big milestones are, if you are going to fund through something like the Clean Water Fund has a deadline of September 30th every year for plan specs and loans to be submitted. So in order to meet that deadline, design would start this fall, early in the spring, targeting design documents going to DNR, which includes plans, specifications, a loan application, and they have to have approved the facilities plan prior to September 30th. September 30th, there is a 90-day window in which DNR will review the plans and specs. That's a statutory requirement. And then usually about that time, the funding list would come out, and that would set you up then to bid a project in spring of 2026. For the stuff we're talking about here, you're talking about a 2-year project. So the first you would start to see new equipment go online would be 2028. Am I off a year?
Spring of 26.
Yeah, spring of 26. So then out into late 2027, early 2028. That's the fastest you could do it. So let's say you didn't go the fastest. Basically, if you can't get the facilities plan, like we can't come to agreement and you submit the facilities plan by Q1 of 2025, there's not enough time to get to that September 30th date. And then it's just a year. So if we wait, if you guys decide you don't want to move forward with something, you want to refine this, whatever, we can't come to agreement in the communities, that pushes the whole kit and caboodle 12 months. Because DNR only takes applications applications that qualify for principal forgiveness September 30th of every year. Rural development, a little different program. You can do it, you can apply anytime you want. It is very dependent on when in the calendar year when in the fiscal year, not calendar year, fiscal year. Their fiscal year runs October to September, I think it is. And there's 2 periods of the year where you have more opportunity. One is shortly after the new fiscal year, because they'll get their budget, assuming the feds actually pass a budget. Or they do something that's called pooling, where any of the states that haven't haven't used all of their money in a given budget year will send it all back to Washington, and Washington will redistribute it. And Wisconsin has generally been very successful in getting pooling money. So we've had a couple projects that have been submitted in like June, July timeframe, because pooling happens in August, that have been the recipients of larger grants because of that. The other thing that has to happen in parallel with this, this is all kind of assuming you're just a normal municipality, where Dane, Iowa has the ability to make its own decisions and borrow its own money and move forward with stuff. You guys don't get that luxury. So it's still all possible to do this rapid schedule if that was something you wanted to do, but there's a parallel effort of working with the communities. And that's one thing I do have questions for you guys tonight, is how you want to go about engaging with your individual communities. But basically, as we've looked at it, you can submit, Dane, Iowa can submit a facilities plan without having complete community buy-in. I wouldn't recommend doing it without having discussions with the communities, but you have the authority to be able to submit your own facilities plan. You can't borrow money on your own, so you have to work with the communities in order to borrow money. And so that really, to me, is a make or break by May of the year May of the year you're submitting your loan application. If all three communities can't kind of be working together and have a good understanding and know that they're paying for something and kind of be moving in the direction of a loan application, it's kind of too late at that point.
You're talking by May of 25.
By May of, yeah, so if it's a 2025 application, by May of 2025, there's wiggle room in that. That's not a black line. If two of the three communities were on board or ready to go and there was some sticking point for one of the other ones that just took another month, it's not going to derail the whole thing. May is more if for some reason after discussions you guys say, okay, well, instead of doing the current high priority list, we're not going to do the lift stations. We're going to wait. We're moving those to medium priority. Then we have to submit a facilities plan amendment to DNR to change that scope, which they need to have that by May. So it'd be really more big decisions need to be finalized by May of the year you're submitting a loan application.
So you can't submit a facilities plan to the DNR until the communities decide.
No, you can't. What I was saying is you can. I wouldn't recommend doing it without having a conversation with the communities. But honestly, I would recommend not waiting until you have all stuff in agreement, because it takes a very long time to get a facilities plan approved these days. I'm hoping it's getting better because there's a bunch of new young engineers that are working at DNR doing review, but the practice the last couple of years has been averaging about 6 months in my experience. And the worst one I've had is about 11 and a half months to get an approval.
So you're suggesting for the facilities plan that once we get it to the point that we're ready to present it to the communities,
Yep.
we have a hearing with
A
the
group
public.
meeting, yeah. Or
Either-
we'll do a public, I would recommend you host the regulatory public meeting as Dane, Iowa, and then we can do as many individual or group meetings with the communities as
Right.
we'd like. And really from a community, so I guess I would, in my mind, once we're kind of all in agreement of how you would like to proceed with the final plan, we'll draft up the report. We can get you guys the report, either have the public hearing immediately thereafter, or meet with the communities and have the public hearing kind of in the same month, but target submitting a facilities plan before or as soon thereafter as you can.
And that hearing is on the facilities plan. It's not about
It's not about funding, it's not about, it's just
just
submitting
the
the
plan.
facilities.
Just the plan. This is the
Correct.
plan. There's nothing
Yep.
about debt, nothing about
Correct.
that comes later.
Yep. It'll lay out the options and we'll document all of
Right,
the,
so people be
the
aware that
cost
there's
per
a cost to
RLU.
this plan. But yes.
And that's a big part of the public hearing as well, is basically it's a public hearing is about a half-hour presentation that I'll give, walking through everything we've talked about for the last 2 years and then the big part being the cost and the rate impact.
And those rate numbers were existing that you gave us for what we have now and what it would be.
Yeah, so that first page there.
It's not additional, it's what they would.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what Dane, Iowa charges each community. So what each community charges their ratepayers is their decision, and after that, what kind of returns they need to cover their system and also for everything else. So they would pay. So rate increases would be an individual municipal decision.
So there wouldn't necessarily be a rate increase until a loan application is submitted, or
So
when
the
does that happen?
the actual rate increases by community are the decision of the community. Dane, Iowa will not begin to rate, I don't think can begin to raise rates until you incur the debt. So you technically wouldn't start charging the communities the line, the bold line, or whatever rendition of that line it becomes, until you are done with the project. Because you don't start getting charged principal and interest payments until you've reached substantial completion. So the communities won't begin to incur that cost until 2027 sometime. The communities will, however, need to do a rate increase in order to secure the loan. So if that's a clean water fund loan, they'll have to do a rate increase that shows that their rates are in place to cover the debt being incurred no later than the loan closing, which will probably, if in that schedule there, would be spring of 2026.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you back up just
Yes,
a little bit, because I'm
sorry.
writing, so what
So-
occurs spring of 2026?
Spring of 2026 would be when the communities would need to have rate increases in place to cover the loan, but you will not begin paying until late 2027.
That's all subject on how quick this all transpires.
Yeah, this is
You're going
on that
with the
scenario.
Cadillac, let's do it right now.
That's
So
just
that's
as
not-
we've talked
that's
about
not-
here.
Yeah.
And that's just with the Clean Water Fund.
That's just the Clean
Right.
Water Fund. So rural development, if you want those details, so if you get rural development rate increases, it would all act the same. You have to have your rate increases in place at time of loan closing, which occurs early on in the project. So quarter one, quarter two, maybe quarter three on the stretched end of 2026 in that presented schedule.
Any other questions for Ben? Okay, Ben, you said you're gonna talk about next steps. What-
So I guess right now, I mean, we can definitely go through details. I would love some feedback from you guys on what you're thinking. From a community involvement standpoint, I guess next steps are you guys need to give us feedback, whether that's tonight or if you want to absorb, and we can talk about it again at the August meeting. But get some feedback on, do you feel any of these are high priority? Do you not feel they're high priority? Do you want to do a larger loan to address these high priority, or a larger project to address these high priority things, or not?
Define your high priority when you say immediate.
That's same tomato. Sorry, that
So-
anything on that column that's called high or immediate is, I would recommend prioritizing, proceeding with that. In my view, the scope of things that you need to do warrants a large undertaking, not a piecemeal undertaking. And given the scale of what costs are, that requires borrowing. There was talk early on in the facilities plan, and it's still able to be talked about, that you guys do more of a piecemeal approach where you fix the disc aerators, you fix the belt press, and kind of tackle them on one-off projects over a long period of time, or a longer period of time. You don't have the cash to do any of those at this point. So you would have to be then borrowing individually for each one of those. And which is an option. It's just something that you guys really need to decide on how you want to proceed through those steps. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the high priority or the top priority or whatever we're calling them, tomatoes, is rather sooner rather than later. Then we've got the medium ones, which 5 years out, and then the other ones 10 years out, and some of them are just,
Some of them
fit them in sometime for this. Correct.
And some of those, I mean, we can go through and microanalyze the individual line items there. If you guys decided, the roofs are not something you want to lump into a bigger project and you want to pay cash for those, sweet. I mean, the challenge becomes there is you've got a decent amount of roof area, so you're going to need probably, sum up all of the roof numbers, but I would guess there's probably $250,000 of roofing costs amongst your sites. So inevitably, you will pay a little more to do a large project because there's contractors have to manage that project then. But on the flip side, if you don't do a large project, you're going to be in construction for the next 15 years continuously. And
My concern is we borrow for a piecemeal project, and all of a sudden we're working on one section. We're walking on the water line to come in here, something like this. We're working on that, and the belt press goes. Now all of a sudden we're scrambling for something that's 6 months, 8 months out to order that we don't have, and we're under construction for something different. So, I mean,
yep, that's a real possibility. And I will be upfront. I mean, if you wanted to go in with zero risk, and I'm not at all recommending this, but if you wanted no risk of something failing on you, you do all of it. But I don't think that's warranted. I think what we've looked at for the high priority or the immediate priority needs are the things that present the most risk for you guys. They're the longest lead time items, and they're the most critical components of your entire treatment plan.
well, I know you and Lisa spend a lot of time on this, and also you've talked a lot with Jeff and Sean, and they live it, so they know the stuff that keeps them awake at night here, worrying about that. So I'm not being an engineer myself. I've got a lot of faith in what the four of you guys have talked about as far as prioritizing items, as far as what can sit for 5 years and what really needs to be done soon before we really regret it.
And I would agree that you've got, the four of you got a good handle on what's high priority, what's not.
We need to pare this down, folks.
Can she finish, please? Thank you.
I mean, if you're listing it as high priority, I mean, I respect that. I just have one question about the headworks. What is causing the deterioration? Is it like hydrogen sulfide?
Sulfide, yeah.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, you guys experience a lot of H2S just because of the long force mains.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
This, we need to look at this. There's got to be some way to shave some of this off. It just has to be.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to give them carte blanche, and there's over $1 million in engineering.
Right. It's based off of percentage, but yeah.
Based off of percent. I just like to tighten it up.
Historical percentage.
One of the things he mentioned, I don't think all the rust needs replacing. I think that's.
Okay.
I've been in the building trade a long time.
And we're not saying, I'm just saying, that was my opinion,
Yeah.
but they also said that there's things we can pare back if we feel comfortable on it. I'm not an engineer, so I'm yielding to our experts. But like you said, you've got a lot of experience in some of this stuff. Obviously, I'll listen to what you have to say.
Well, Jeff, what would you, if you were gonna say, well, we can wait on this, we can wait on that, It's
Well-
your opinion.
I'll, on the flip side of that, the belt press is, as we have talked,
Yeah.
that's a major player. That goes down when dead in the water.
That's the number one priority.
The headworks, just being the shape it's in, structurally, I mean, knock on wood, that side of the wall don't cave out, something like that. The bar screen was rebuilt, I think 8 years ago. But there's stuff in there that can't be rebuilt. It's just too deteriorated. It's like Ben said, you could go in and to piecemeal this stuff while you're in there doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, we talked the other day about sidewalks and pavement and roofs. If that's something that, I mean, we're 25 years in, they've probably been on 26 years on
So
that.
they're kind of getting to the end of their life.
They're getting to the end of their
Oh,
life.
yeah.
They're not leaking, but that's something you could, like I said, we could finance that ourselves if the time came. You can do some action on it. Look, that's not gonna fill basements with poop water. It's a roof leak. We can fix that kind of stuff. If you want to go that route, there's definitely some things that could be shaved off of here. But
Specify.
it does keep you up because I think about just the age of stuff and weird things break, things get old.
But, I mean, can you specify exactly what keeps you up at night? I know the belt press, the headwork.
Generators not wanting to start, I mean, we run them regularly and they all run. So, I mean, to sit here and say, sure, like Ben said, they can run another 5 years flawlessly. One of them could lay down tomorrow if we had stuff.
What do you do?
Right.
That's not unusual, it's not specific to
It's
this
everyday
place,
life,
it's
it's
just the
any
way it
outfit like this.
should work.
No. No. So that's a decision you need to make as a board. Certainly anything you're thinking of that you maybe think could be put on a medium priority, now it's time to get it out and talk about it.
So what do the others think? I mean, Kate and I and Ray have been getting away. What do you guys
Well,
think?
one question I have is, let's just say we went with this high priority, move forward with this plan. Where does it actually leave us in 5 years when we got $7 million on the plate, 5 years?
What do you mean, where does it leave us?
As far as, you know, when you're
What is
talking.
the eventual then rate increase after that?
Yeah, I mean, the financing, I mean, because it's financing all based on
The financing model that's there is based on high priorities. That's the immediate
You're
rate.
talking
Yep.
5 years.
Yeah,
So
so
a medium priority.
yeah,
We're still over 7 million on the high priority.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
what
Yeah, then- yeah.
I can tell you in 1 second.
I don't mean just for the dollars, I just mean,
I know, I'm gonna tell you percentage. So like, let me see. I'm just gonna pick Black Earth because it's nice and easy. It's about a 63% additional number over. So I'm saying it wrong. Basically, it's about $10 a month to do the medium priority then as well. So like on Black Earth,
Per LRU.
per RLU. So on Black Earth right now, it's $16 a month is the rough number. So Black Earth would have an additional 10 on top of that. So total would be 26.
and then we're going back in 5 years, going back to the DNR Clean Water Fund and
Yeah.
other sources.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you, and I didn't bring this along, and I'm not necessarily a proponent of it, but that $7 million number is not going to be $7 million for 5 years from now.
Right.
I don't remember we talked about we had the inflation graphs last month. So I mean, again, I usually figure 10% a year on a normal year, and Last couple have been more than 10%. We're back to more normal this year from what we've seen in the bidding market. It's a much more stable situation, but I don't know.
Can you, I'm sorry if I missed this, but like on this document, the Dane.
Yep.
Which document are you looking at?
This one.
Okay,
The figures that are represented by each village, is that what our expected?
The first page is a little weird just because it's lift stations. So each village has their own discrete.
This is lift station.
Because these are lift stations.
Okay.
You go to the next page. So like site work, it's just breaking it out. But all of the lift stations we had is high priority. So it's just that's the total cost estimate for a lift station improvement at
Okay.
Arena and Mazamani and Black.
Otherwise, it would have just been a lot of pages with a single column.
But that's not charged to the communities that's Dane, Iowa, and Dane, Iowa would be.
Yeah.
All right.
Our amounts are divvied out of the total, not out.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So it really just the big numbers at top give you the magnitude by
Okay.
structure. So it's 600 and whatever thousand for the Arena lift station.
Okay.
And as you go down, then just so you kind of get a sense of where the cost estimate is,
Okay.
assuming money is being spent.
so,
And I'm also going to be straightforward. And Ray, you pointed out the engineering. Like this is a planning level estimate. I'm not. You approving this is not saying we're spending these dollars. It's saying we want to move forward with this approach. Then to get to the next step, a design has to happen. We would give you a proposal for design based on what you tell us the scope wants to be. And I'm actually going to look at what it costs to do that as opposed to just saying it's a percentage of the number. But that's a rule of thumb at a planning level estimate as to what those numbers end up being. Same thing with contractor numbers. It's completely market driven what that contractor overhead and markup number is. They have management fees. That's what that is. You can never control it, nor can you get away from it because that's how a contractor manages their business. So we calibrate our cost estimates every year based on the projects we bid. We get breakdowns of what the costs are from the contractors, and that's what goes into the cost estimates that we prepare.
Okay. And then you said probably if we would move forward, the spring of 2026 is when our rates should increase so that we can secure funding.
That would be, your rates need to increase having secured funding. So you can start paying for, because you would have applied and been awarded funding prior to
Close
that.
on the loan,
Yeah.
that's when
Correct.
the rates go up.
But that Dane, Iowa doesn't start charging the communities back until reaching the substantial completion of the
Correct.
policy. Okay,
Yes.
that's fine.
And that becomes, nobody starts paying the loan because it's kind of a shell game of money for the way the loan gets repaid. And that's a reminder, you cannot pay ahead on a clean water fund loan. Thank you, Peter. The other thing to remember, and there's some newer board members that weren't involved with some of the true ups even when we had debt, the way that this organization is structured is the debt is paid by RLUs. And that changes every year. So basically, if you take the pie of debt on an annual basis, and 1 year Mazamani's 50% and whatever the numbers were, Lacquer's 20 and Arena's 30 or whatever it comes to, and then Cross Plains and Wisconsin Heights get built into that pie as well. And the next year, Arena builds 1,000 houses and becomes the biggest community of this group. That pie shifts completely.
Okay.
So people are paying those debt charges
Based
on
population.
yeah, essentially population. That's how Dane, Iowa was originally organized, and how I've at least assumed in this we're going to continue. And that's how your FCI charges occur today as well. That was that FCI account that was set up 5 years ago or whatever it was.
So, I mean, I know all the lift stations are high priority. A lift station fails, sewage is not moving from that community.
Correct.
And people are gonna have backup in their basements.
And
Whatever.
those are the only things that are actually under capacity today at the point. Because the fact that Black Earth's pump station had 2 pumps running is a really bad thing. Because what's supposed to happen is one pump only ever runs. There's always supposed to be a backup. So that means Black Earth's lift station was over capacity for 9 hours.
That happens community to community occasionally. I mean, it's happened.
Yep.
You know,
But it
arenas run
happens
both-
more frequently.
Arenas run both pumps briefly too.
Yep.
For
It's
time.
happened twice in
Yeah.
25
Yeah.
years. The other was.
Yeah,
were
so
really-
I
But that
mean,
is
it's
not
not
the
like,
intention of what that is.
That's
oh, I got this guy's fault. And if one goes down, what you do is you pump it off and bring it over here and dump it in the big pit out there.
Ben, so what are you looking for tonight? So
Tonight is,
I know we're not
we
like
can
gonna
consider,
say, go ahead, do it, or
Nope.
don't ever
Really?
do this again.
really, whether it's tonight, next month, a year from now, at some point, you guys have to decide on approach. And I can continue, if you have questions, if you want other feedback, if you want things presented differently or the details, we'll gladly bring those before you. But it's kind of at a point where now you guys have to decide how you want to approach this.
Well, once we do this, the facilities plan has to be submitted to DNR,
Correct.
and that could be a 6 to 12 month review
Correct.
Right.
before anything else can move forward.
Right.
That's what
You
we're-
could
Or can we
start-
be
you can
securing
be-
funding?
You can be
Yeah.
working on funding, we can
Okay.
work on,
And
in
the
fact,
same-
we would, if you wanted it to be doing that high pace schedule, or the fastest you could go schedule that's there, which is also a realistic schedule. Normally, when we get to this point of a facilities plan,
This.
that would be what a lot of communities do. Doesn't have to be. You can sit on. I've had clients sit on a facilities plan for 5 years. But basically, where we're at is you guys. It's in your guys' court as to how you want to approach this, and then we will write the final report around that. But all of the information that will go in the report is now compiled, and we can needle our way into whatever additional
When you say
questions or
how we want to go
It'd
forward,
be-
it's like,
is this immediate
it's
project?
something
Are you in
similar like
agreement with
this,
that?
but we
Yep.
don't know exactly what items we want to keep
Right.
in
Or
high
to
priority.
Ray's point, if you guys feel you want to
Remove roofs or
reduce
something like that.
things from high priority to. Now, I will also say, this is a little bit of nuance and strategy and funding, but like if you think you're going to do the roofs, and I guess I would disagree, Ray, I've never seen a 50-year roof before, but if you decide you're not going to do roofs as a part of a project, a bigger project, that's fine. But if you're going to do them in the next couple of years, they're still immediate priority. Like, this isn't necessarily defining a project, it's defining a timeline. And that, I mean, so we don't have to get to a minute detail. If you want to, we can. And we can move stuff around on all of this, but it doesn't have, like, just because it's on that list doesn't mean it's a funded. Now, we need to get the facilities plan in, and then we need to go through an exercise in this room again of, okay, what is going to be included in the project then? But just be aware of that you're not locking yourself into, that means this is what the construction is going to be. If you want to, similarly, if one of the communities says, hold off on our pump station, we're going to do so much I&I work, it's going to make your head hurt, and we won't need a new pump station. Okay, that's their choice. That's their risk that 2019 doesn't, or 2018 doesn't happen again. But that's fine, and that changes how things look in a project plan. But it's important to get that facilities plan in because that's a long lead time item.
Yeah.
And you would work on financing
Yes.
at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Fine. Assuming you guys, and that's something you guys should weigh in on too, is what is the schedule? I think that's a good question for Jeff. I think this is a realistic schedule. I've talked about it for a couple of years. I've got concerns about a couple of your assets here. The belt press is one of them. I'm nervous about the headworks. Mm-hmm. It's not gonna implode. A wall is not gonna fall in. But if it keeps deteriorating, it just makes the structural improvement that much harder. You know, if we expose rebar, it's a whole different animal than just concrete rehabilitation. Or if a bigger area exposes rebar, like you're just starting to lose it. So I can't tell you, is that going to happen tomorrow? Is it going to happen 10 years from now? I can tell you it's bad.
But there's rebar showing now.
There's some areas that have rebar showing,
Yeah.
and it's just what those additional areas end up. I mean, it's like tooth decay, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But really, so those are the things that we'll need feedback on before that report can be finalized around what you want to have it do. Is how do you want to approach these priorities? If you have an intention of big project or many little projects, and what timeline that looks like. And we'll put all of that into the report, because then that'll be an important part of a public hearing to communicate that to anyone who wants to listen.
How does that complicate funding though? If, let's say, you know, we decide as a group, well, we're not gonna do, say, lift stations, but we're gonna do this other, I mean, and then.
So the funding application itself goes in September. So the design is probably the more critical part of that, because if, you know, it's like anything. As you build towards a final product, you know, early on it's easy to do this and do that and do this and do that. And if all of a sudden at the end we say, well, we're not going to do lift stations, that something like that, that's fine. We can just take those plan sheets out and put them on a shelf. And when you do decide to do the lift stations, we take them off that shelf and we make a different project out of them. But if you were to like play a yo-yo game of something else, and I don't have a good example off the top of my head, it gets harder the closer you get to it. But from a budgeting standpoint, that budget will get finalized for the loan application in September for Clean Water Fund. So there's more flexibility with that. Now, if any of the communities decide they do want to consider pursuing rural development, that's a little more complex, because rural development, we would be applying this fall. And then, because they make you apply early on in the design process, because there's a lot more steps you have to work through in securing that funding. Have any of your communities done rural development before?
Especially now with Baba.
Yeah.
That
And that's a newer thing.
that's gonna really push it
Yeah.
back for more planning.
Yeah.
I would love it if we could avoid BABA at all costs, unless the election changes it this fall, but that's because it sounds miserable. And I think it's gonna
Well, especially
throw
the
wrenches in a lot of
electronics part of
things.
it. We have
Yeah.
a large part of electronics here. I'm not real comfortable to make a decision tonight, just because we got this yesterday. I'd like to look through it some more. But I'd also like to have a goal of what we should be shooting towards for our next meeting, so we don't come into it and say, oh, now what do we need to do? It's basically what you're looking for is, are we looking to do a big project? Do we want to do it piecemeal?
Correct.
And are we comfortable with doing like a high priority, not necessarily these items, but a high priority list?
Yep. And if it's not these items, if you want to change them, you know, just mark that.
Do
thing
we have
up
to do that? Because
If
you brought
it's-
that up as we don't have to do that until we set the budget for the borrowing.
Yeah,
Or do we have
if
to
there's
do that
stuff you
also?
know of now, like that is absolutely not high priority to this
Okay.
group or to you individually, would be good to know. I would still advise, like using the dumb roof example, if it's just I don't want it as a part of the project, then I would just leave it on there. If it's we think we're gonna, you know, the lift station thing, we think now we're gonna, you know, our community has committed to I&I reduction and it's going to be awesome and great and the whole system's getting replaced. Then I would move. I would try and do it now, because that just eliminates one more step down the
Okay.
road. If it's unknown, then I wouldn't change it.
Okay.
I hate to be wishy-washy like that, but it can be accommodated either way. The earlier we know things, the better.
So basically what you're looking for is, do we want to do a big project?
Project
Do we want to do
approach,
it
yep.
piecemeal? Do we want to prioritize stuff? And is there anything on the high priority list right now
Yep.
that we
And
feel
then-
doesn't need to be there that we could move off?
And then, what timeline you guys think is realistic?
And then at what
do you
point?
think? Because that's partially your community's decision too. Is do you think your community and it always can be slowed down. It's really difficult to speed things up. So If there is a desire by this group to follow a schedule like that, or follow a schedule at that plus a year because you want to have more time to talk as a community, that type of thing does go into the facility plan as well as what the anticipated schedule is. And it honestly, it kind of changes how I would recommend things to you guys. If you're saying don't apply for anything until September of 2026, then then there's less parallel paths happening than if you say we would like to have that belt press and the headworks and the aeration basins replaced as soon as possible. Then more parallel things have to happen, and we should start organizing ourselves to communicate with the communities. The other thing I would say you guys should think about is, for each of your individual communities, what would be the best format to convey this information? Because I can see it happening in a couple different ways. I'm happy to come to your meetings and present this a couple times. We could have a group meeting here or anywhere really, so that everyone hears it the same, and then we go to the individual communities. We could do one of those meetings before a public hearing, one after. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios, and you guys know how your individual boards think and work, and but that's something I would say you guys should think about too, is how do you guys feel the best way to communicate with the communities are? Because that's going to be the biggest effort. You guys are in this every day, or once a month.
So that's something we should think about for the next.
I would say think about that for the next meeting as well.
And it'll be for the August meeting then.
Well, that's just my suggestion right now. I'll let you guys, if you guys agree, then we don't have to take any action. But at least we have a goal, that's what all 7 of us should be working towards, is thinking about those 4, plus how we regularly communicate it to the communities. I just want to come in and everyone prepared, so
Right.
that we can do this. I mean,
You wouldn't want a small meeting with this group between now and August meeting to, or I mean, is
I
that
don't-
something you guys can talk about?
we can't talk.
Right, I hear you. That's why
Individually,
I'm wondering why, or maybe you wanna
I have a
get
special,
together before next month's meeting.
a special board meeting.
If I
Throw
want
this around.
any more information, I'll request it from you and you can get it from them.
Do we think we have time to be able to do this? Yeah. I think if the time was a little bit more pressing, then yeah, special meeting makes sense, but I think we're good
Yeah.
until the next time. Now, if we don't come on a decision on next time, then we might have to have a special commission meeting so we can get this done. At least get the facilities report into the DNR for approval, because that could take a year alone, so. And we can do some things in the meantime, but we can't pull the trigger until that is fully approved.
So my biggest concern is that we get a belt press in the works. It's gonna be done. We're gonna come to some conclusion. That's one of the things we need. They cost $1 million and they take a year to get. And that's the one major thing that'll put us out of business here.
Right, and that's why we need to have a facilities report, because we can't do the belt press without the facilities
We
report.
could, yeah, this is all part of it, but that's something that we could order on our own tonight, right now, without.
No, we have to have the DNR's approval, we have to have the facilities report, unless it breaks down and then we get
Then we could replace.
do it, but yeah, it's a good idea to order it now, but
But
we
we've already
can't do it.
had, these guys have already had some problems where
Right.
it'd be an easy stretch to go ahead and, I mean, we could get, that seems to be the thing we need to get on order the quickest.
Right, and to get it on order, we have to have a facilities
Right.
report. So that's what we that's why I want to go into this next meeting with everyone doing their homework, thinking about this stuff through, and so that we can decide, the 7 of us, what we want it to look like. And so then these people can get the final report together and get it in for approval after all the public is seen.
And, I mean, so we want to discuss at the board level, how to communicate with the communities.
That's one of
the things,
One
but
of the
then
things.
each community needs to decide on this list, do we want to do?
No,
No,
we
no,
decide.
no.
But I mean,
They need to be informed. The community
That's-
should
Right.
not weigh into the scope.
No.
Yep.
You will go down too many rabbit
I
holes.
mean,
with that.
we're
That
all
is-
representatives of our community.
Right,
right.
You asked us to do these,
Yeah.
so we'll make the decisions, but the
Yep.
thing is, they're gonna have, the communities are gonna have to approve individually the borrowing when we get to that point. But that's not what these meetings are gonna be about. It's not
Okay.
about borrowing, it's
Yeah.
about this whole program, so that everyone's aware of what's going on.
Do you mind?
And you guys all good here? So I can,
Do you mind? Yeah, you're just saying the communities, they need to know exactly what the board is looking at. That's the purpose of the meetings, not for the communities to decide what's going to happen.
Right.
It's what, yeah,
Right.
it's what's going on, so they know what's going
Well,
on.
yeah, and that's,
So-
that's my point, is that, you know, the board needs to know what's going on.
right. And this will be how we present it. I mean, he's talked about having individual board meetings that Ben would be at. We're also talking about a public hearing, so we'd have everyone together. A lot of, just making sure there's a lot of opportunities for people to have a say and also to find out what's going on. But we can decide how, we all know our communities, what's the best fit for our communities to do that.
I'm for being proactive and
Yeah,
spending the money we need to spend, not being afraid to do it. I've seen on the water supply side where I work, I've seen so many communities not take action, and because of all the time and money arrangements, it just turns into a holocaust.
yeah.
The question my concern is, do we, and we have complete faith in, in Town and Country and Jeff and Sean, but as far as talking as a board about all the individual things on the list, do we need to go around and look at things? Or
If you feel that would help you, Jeff would be more
Yeah,
than
any
happy.
of you at any time,
Yeah, to show you
wanna
around.
go see something, if you look on this and say, I'd like to see what they're talking about here, by all means, give me a call and
Okay.
we can set it up.
Okay,
Yeah, I guess I.
I'd rather
like
do,
that.
I'm sorry, this one quick thing
Okay.
though, let you know. I'd rather do it individually so we don't create, like, all of a sudden there's like 4 of us showing up, we got a quorum, Jeff showing us around.
Yep.
I don't want
Yeah.
anything like that.
No.
I'm sorry, Kate, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to finish that.
Yeah, no, good point, but, I mean, I would definitely like to have, to look, like, for example, at our lift station.
Yep.
What condition it, and the belt press, and I know what, I've got a pretty good idea what the headworks looks like.
I'm a big proponent of anything that you're looking at, forget this, because in general, if you're looking at replacing a piece of equipment, I think everybody should lay eyes on it and know what that piece of equipment does for us. Literally, so you know what you're replacing. So you could, if somebody asks, you could walk out and put your hand on what you just voted to spend, who knows how much money on.
And Jeff and Sean are really good about giving tours and explaining
Absolutely.
things. I've had them do that for me a couple times for different things. Just contact them, they're more than happy to help. I agree with Norm, if there's something you want to see, it's a lot easier to have it in your mind while we're talking about it, than having
Absolutely.
seen it. I
Absolutely.
agree with you, Norm.
I'll be calling you, Jeff, sometime. So-
You bet.
Okay.
Let me know. You bet.
Anything else on this subject? Otherwise, you guys all got your homework for next time? Come on, Bob, you were a better student than that. You did your homework, didn't you? Okay, well, thank you guys for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Yes,
Very well done.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Jeff.
Lots of details.
Thanks, work.
Thank you.
All right. We go to number 8 now on the agenda.
Nice work.
Review and approval of the O&M bills for June of 2024.
I move to approve.
I'll second. Thank you, Bob. Any questions, comments, snide remarks? Otherwise,
Any questions on any of those expenditures?
I didn't know we had an annual membership with Granger, that was required with Granger?
Yeah, it gets us free shipping.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
we've been doing it.
yeah,
I was like, This, I can't remember, but we've apparently been doing it for a long time.
Well, and it's only $129?
I thought it was a little steep myself.
Yeah, but if you're getting free shipping.
Yeah. And they get it here fast. And they got
Yeah.
we use them pretty regular.
Any other comments? Otherwise, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Review and approval of the replacement bills for June of 2024.
Do not have any for June.
That makes that easier. Review and approval of the June 2024 financial statement.
I move to approve as presented with the note that we also have that money in those broken
CDs, yeah.
CDs
Yeah.
that are not reflected on here in the improvement
Correct.
fund. So we have more money available immediately than it looks like here.
Yeah, there's the 300, whatever, plus whatever it's made.
Yeah.
Second. Thank you, Bob. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? June 2024 Dane, Iowa wastewater facility report.
Of course, you can sit good, plant's running nice. We are handling a very large influent flow every day. We haven't dropped below 500,000. This is on our third week, and we're normally 250 to 300,000 a day. So, been a couple occasions where Black Earth by itself has pumped more in 24 hours than we normally take in.
And this is all due to all the massive
All the
rains?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's infiltration, people pumping their basements into the system, all of the above.
We process a lot of groundwater, a lot of rainwater right now, so. But, plant's running good.
You said there was I had talked last week with you about something that you needed to replace, and I said, bring it up in your replacement.
Oh,
figure.
that was that the loader? That was
Yeah.
the loader, yeah.
Into the system.
I'm looking at getting, the loader is 12 years old. It's never had a major service, meaning rear ends, transmission, just a thorough going over, that of course would include engine oil and all the filters. I got a quote, $3,300. I told you too, I was a little low. $3,300 to get that done. They'd come out to the site and do it. I think it's a good move. That's a $110,000 or $20,000 machine, and
we use it here.
yes, we
Right,
do.
and he had told me about this, and I told him that's O&M.
I didn't want to go ahead. I felt a little odd just saying yes without talking to you
But
guys.
I wanted him to let you guys know that that's what's going
It's
on.
well within his purview.
Oh, yeah,
to this
yep,
without our
yep.
estimates.
Thanks for letting us know.
You bet, you bet. And I'd also like to throw this out. I want to put it, there's a commercial dehumidifier we can get for the basement. It's, with the weather we've had lately, we get water standing on the floor in the basement. We got two small ones down there, household that can't keep up. We can get a commercial one for $2,000. That, I forget how many gallons it'll take out of the air in a day. And it'll run nonstop, and
And that's again another O&M thing.
Another O&M.
Thanks for letting us
Yeah.
know about it, yeah.
that's we had them priced out at the
And you
last.
wanna talk about corrosion, there you go, you gotta take care of them. right
Yeah,
in there.
yeah, all right,
Yeah,
sounds
right.
good.
Any questions for Jeff then? All right, next one, informational items. Any informational items? So just please take some time to do your homework. And we're leading up to Bob's big moment.
Sucks it.
Bob and Ray. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll see you tomorrow afternoon. Did I understand your email right? You're printing off copies? of the
Yes, I have
contract?
read
Okay,
Hey, Jeff,
then I won't do that.
No, don't.
just make sure, can I see your number?
Yes, 608.